What's up guys, welcome back to another video. Today's video is just going to be an updated talent guide and honor talent guide for people rocking Assassination in patch 7.3.5. Anyway, let's get straight into it. Alright, to start us off, I'll start with the regular talents and then I'll move into honor talents after that. At the start of this expansion, most Assassination rogues favored a bleed style build, but after taking several nerfs, we've transitioned towards using a poison style build, especially with the addition of Toxic Blade. And basically, the poison build, what it allows us to do is have a stronger mortal wounds effect from wound poison, which reduces healing that the targets can do to each other. And it just makes you have more consistent pressure over the course of the match, and you're a good asset to a team to have that mortal strike effect, as not all classes carry one. In the second row, Subterfuge is the best option here, as it allows our Vanish to have a greater potential for peeling and allows us to put out more garrotes, which for Assassination, the more bleeds on poison targets you have, the more energy you get back, which allows you to have more pressure, and more pressure is a good thing. Allows us to keep those dots rolling. Assassination kind of snowballs if it can keep bleeds on multiple targets. Since it gets so much energy, it can just put out a lot of pressure and it gets more dangerous, I'd say. In the following row, Vigor is really the only option I would consider here. Deeper Stratagem used to be able to do some cheesy stuff with this, with the old Exsanguinate build, with like big ruptures, but they've made Rupture more consistent, and it's less important now as we don't run that build. Having Vigor is just nice. It allows us to build, like when you get CC'd and your energy goes from being nothing up to 150, it allows you to quickly rebuild combo points when you get back on the target and get those bleeds rolling again, instead of always feeling like you're starved and only being able to press like 2 abilities before you run out of energy. In the following row, Elusiveness is amazing. It makes our Feint, which is a spammable ability, reduce our damage by 30% for 5 seconds, and this is phenomenal. It's the reason why rogues are able to survive in PvP. Whenever you're getting trained down, you can just maintain Feint the entire time. It makes you excessively tanky compared to what you would be without. The other two options aren't really good. Cheat Death is way too inconsistent, and Leeching Poison, if you killed someone from full to 0 in PvP, you'd only get about 1.2 mil healing, which really isn't that much considering they're not just going to let you kill them 100 to 0, and if you killed them, you really don't need that healing anyway. And I guess the most important thing beyond all that is that you lose your Crippling Poison, which would mean as Assassination you would have no slow, and you would have a really, really hard time sticking to the target. In the following row, there's two options for PvP. Internal Bleeding can be really good for tunneling people down. However, with the current honor talents that we run, I believe that Prey on the Weak is better. In PvP, it is only a 12% damage increase, but it's still very powerful. If you do setups with something like Rogue Mage Priest, where everybody's hitting into the kidney shot, it's a really, really nice damage increase, and you shouldn't play without this talent. In addition to that, if you have this talent over Internal Bleeding, you can sometimes use your Vanish to sap off of kidney shots, and you can otherwise not do that with Internal Bleeding, as there will be a dot on your target and it will break the sap. In the next row, Toxic Blade is by far the best option, and I would say only viable option right now. It allows us to have way higher burst damage. It's kind of like, it's not quite a Vendetta. Vendetta increases our damage by 30% for a certain duration, and a Toxic Blade increases our poison damage by 35%. Stacked together, these things are amazing. Toxic Blade actually hits excessively hard too, and if you get somebody in a kidney shot and have all your bleeds up and you press Toxic Blade with a Vendetta, it actually hits like really, really hard, and it definitely helps you score a lot of kills. It's pretty amazing. In the final row of this talent tree, Venom Rush is really the only viable option for Assassination. You can play Mark for Death for some 2v2 games if you're playing Mage Rogue. However, you're not usually playing Assassination with Mage Rogue in 2s. And what Mark for Death would allow you to do is have stronger openers. You could sap somebody and open with a Mark Kidney, or just allow you to maintain your bleeds a little bit easier throughout the game. However, it's definitely not as strong as Venom Rush, as Venom Rush makes it so that your bleeds on poison targets grant you a total of 10 energy, I believe, up from 7. And I can just verify that real quick. I'm pretty sure Venomous wounds. Yeah, it makes it 10 energy up from 7. So that's like a pretty damn big increase. About 35-40%, I'm guessing. And overall, it'll just make you feel like you're able to use a lot more abilities, and you'll have a much easier time maintaining your bleeds on the target and keeping out that damage. Alrighty, moving on to honor talents. As a human rogue, these are my default honor talents. If I was running Orc instead, I could use Relentless, and paired with the Hardiness Orc racial, it would be a very powerful combination, as it allows you to pretty much have half DR on every stun that hits you. It's pretty powerful. It's not quite half, but it is very close. It'll feel like every kidney shot you ever get hit with is incredibly short, and you'll just feel like you're pretty much not getting CC'd very often. It's pretty cool. But anyway, as a human, just run Gladiator's Medallion paired with Human's Racial, which allows us to trinket out of a stun on a 2-minute cooldown. It definitely provides the most consistent and on-demand form of getting out of crowd control effects. It's pretty nice. In the following row, the default option is definitely Reinforced Armor. Having 10% increased health is nice. It scales with Crimson Vial pretty well, and it just makes you harder to burst down from full to 0. Sparring is definitely a good option in cases where you're against 2 physical classes, whether it be in 2s or 3s. It's definitely good if you're against like Warrior Mistweaver, and Mistweaver is running Way of the Crane is a good example of when you should use sparring. In the following row, I believe that maneuverability is fairly strong. However, I find myself using sprint often to chase people down when I'm not even the target, and maneuverability definitely is not as useful as it could be. Or if I'm rushing at the beginning of the game to get a sap and I manage to use my sprint there, obviously maneuverability is going to be totally wasted. So I prefer to use Shiv. It allows me to stop enemy healers like Priest from rushing my team and getting fears, or just keeping people off of my teammates in general. Having a 70% slow for 4 seconds on a 10-second cooldown is really nice, and in addition to that, it can't be block dodged or parried, so it is pretty much always going to hit the target. And I highly recommend this. It's also free, so it doesn't cost any energy. There's really no reason not to play this talent. I believe it's really strong, and I definitely recommend getting used to it if you are someone who has always played maneuverability. Intent to Kill is not really that good, unfortunately, as it's only really active during our Vendetta, and having a lower cooldown ability like Shiv is much more useful. In the following row, Unfair Advantage definitely provides the biggest damage increase. Turn the Tables is just too inconsistent, and basically it requires us to be CC'd beforehand. Usually you don't immediately burst after coming out of a stun, I would say. You're usually playing defensive, and a lot of the time you'll find that Turn the Tables effect will be wasted. Definitely Unfair Advantage providing the biggest damage increase here, and I would recommend taking it over the other 2 options. In the following row, the only thing you should really consider is Deadly Brew. It allows us to keep our main DPS poison, Deadly Poison, on our weapon, and in doing so, we will still gain the effects of Wound Poison, which is the other poison we can choose to have, which reduces the healing that the target will receive, and it overall adds to your pressure as a rogue, and it is a very, very powerful option. You should always have Deadly Brew. And in the following row, this is the most fun row. Definitely all 3 options are playable, and you can kind of pick the one that you like best. Most people currently at top end are actually playing System Shock since Flying Daggers has been nerfed. However, Flying Daggers is definitely useful if you're playing a spread pressure comp like RLS, or other comps like RPS where Shadow Priest is dotting multiple targets. Maintaining your dots on multiple targets and giving yourself more energy and more spread pressure is really useful with this build. Creeping Venom can kind of be played the same way. Basically, when you use Envenom on somebody, they receive this dot for 6 seconds, and every time they move, the duration is refreshed. So against some teams, like Priests that can't dispel poisons, Creeping Venom will be active almost the entire game, because most people will not stop moving, obviously, because that usually means getting hit with crowd control abilities or being in an unoptimal position. So Creeping Venom definitely adds a lot of passive damage. However, I find a lot of the time Creeping Venom's damage is useless because it's not very much damage, and usually there's a lot of residual healing effects in the game that are healing off Creeping Venom. It can be at like quite additive if you are just training someone down. However, I find that the surprise burst damage from having System Shock, which when we cast Envenom with 5 combo points, adds a pretty big deal of damage. In PvP, under optimal conditions, you can crit with Envenom for about 700k, and System Shock under the same circumstances can crit for about 500k. So it adds about like 30 to 40% more damage on your Envenom. The only downside being that Envenom needs to be cast with 5 combo points, so it can be kind of tricky to manage your combo points as an Assassination Rogue to make sure that System Shock is being procced. I find myself usually using stuff like Fan of Knives to gain that extra combo point, or sometimes you can use Kingsbane or even Toxic Blade to get that last point. Since Mutilate giving 2, you might not always get your critical effect to gain 3 to add up to 5. But overall, definitely System Shock I feel is the most powerful option, and especially powerful in combination with the talent that we have chosen, Prey on the Weak, as they obviously work together. And it just gives you a lot of surprise burst. I found at first when people were still playing a lot of Flying Daggers and Creeping Venom, I was playing System Shock all along, and people were being surprised by the burst. I don't think they expect to be spiked down by an Assassination Rogue. I definitely have a clip of me catching a Resto Druid out of form, I believe, and popping Vendetta behind it, and he gets like taken down and kidney shot, I'm pretty sure. I'll actually show that right after this, and then I'll close out the video. I hope you guys found this useful. Please like, comment, subscribe for more videos. I should have some free time next week. I'm going to try and upload a few videos next week, hopefully like 3 or 4. That'd be pretty cool. If there's anything you'd like to see, please leave me a comment. I'll try and get back to you, and we'll see what we can do. Have a good day, and I'll talk to you all again very soon.